All right, everyone, welcome to our week 4 live classroom. Pretty crazy how fast this class is flying by. I don't know if it's flying by for you guys. It's flying by for me.
Oh, it's flying by.
Oh, good. For better or worse, I'm glad.
Oh, good.
But anyways, it's good to have you guys here. I wanted to talk about week 3 just for a second. Did you guys have any questions on anything from last week before we dive into this next chapter?
Um, Not that I can think of.
Okay. I did get a question, well, several questions actually, about divs. So let me take a second to talk about those, and then we'll dive into week 4. All right. Okay. Who knows what a div is?
Um,
Who knows what it stands for?
Isn't there a divider?
Yeah, good. Okay, so if I just Google HTML div, W3 Schools is the first thing to pop up. It says a section in a document. Well, it won't always. Okay, right here, sorry. The div tag defines a division or a section in an HTML document. Okay, so looking at this page right here, just visually, I can see multiple sections of this HTML document. Okay, I can see we have like this top bar, we have this sidebar, we have this chunk up here, where there's like a button and they have different things up here. There's this section right here, there's this side section. That isn't to say that every single one of those is a div, but it is extremely likely that they are organized into divs. Okay, and I can like right click on this left toolbar and click on inspect. And you can see, here's what the code looks like. Here's a billion A tags, which is just like for anytime you have a link, like a hyperlink, you can see here's the URL for each one of these buttons. But they're all inside of a div. Okay?
oh,
And I can actually see that. And if I scroll up, I can see, oh, there's another div and another div and another div. This one's called sidebar. This one's, so there's all these divs, okay? And let me just stick this onto this side here. I can actually like look over these and highlight these. Let me just close this a little bit. And so when I inspect something, I can see what exactly that is that I clicked on, and then I can hover over these different things and see where these divs are in my document. So there's a lot of divs. Now, looking at that code, you're like, holy cow, what on earth is all that stuff? And we're not going to be doing anything like this in this class, okay? So don't worry about that. I was just doing that to show you that, this side chunk is in a div, this top bar is in a div, there are several divs in here inside the code, because divs are a really easy way to separate different pieces of your code and to organize things in a different way. All right, if I had a div, let me just pull this up real quick. So I have an HTML document. There really isn't much going on right here. I have a couple of paragraphs, okay, and there's like a bunch of random text in these paragraphs, and that's it, okay? So I have paragraph. These are inside of a div, all right, and this div has an ID of unique paragraph. That is not doing a thing, okay? So let me just copy this file path and open it up in my browser. I can't see where the div is because the div isn't doing anything, okay? And I know that it's not doing anything because I don't have unique paragraph referenced anywhere else in this document. I just searched for it. It's not anywhere else. And that's the only attribute that this div has. But let's say that I had, say, a style tag up here with unique paragraph listed. Now, what this does is I can make styles apply to this ID like that. Okay. I also showed you guys last week, I can just do styles like this and say, oh yeah, the color for this div is going to be pink. Okay. And what that means is that it will change the color of the text for everything inside of that div. So if I had like a sidebar div, I could apply styles to the entire div, and then I wouldn't have to put like a pink text style onto every paragraph or to every link or something like that.
Mm.
And so divs are really good for that, for styling things in an organized way. But the main thing that you're going to be using them for in this class, let me pull up. Well, it's going to be used in JavaScript, and I'll go more into that here in a sec. Let me just pull up your guys' book real quick. Sorry, I should have had this up before we started.
Oh,
Did I lose you guys?
nope. I'm still here. I don't know
Okay.
about everybody else.
Yeah. All my
Hello?
screens just turned off.
Oh,
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep, same.
Now you're gone. Maybe. I don't know.
All right. Can you guys hear me or see me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The screen's just black.
Okay. Yeah, my whole computer just froze up. I don't know
Oh
what's
no.
going on. I'll be right back. Hang on one second.
Cool.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. Give me 1 second. Enable device. All right. There we go. Sorry, guys. I don't know what just happened. Okay.
It'll be fine.
All right. Well, what I was going to show you before my computer wigged out. Let me pull this up here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me pull up our course and open up chapter 4. Okay. So in this class, like I said, we're not going to be using divs a lot for styling. If you want to style divs, that's just fine, or use them for that purpose, that's just fine. But what we're going to be using them for is to help us display data to the page. Okay, so if I have something like a file like this, this is towards the beginning of chapter 4. Here's just an example of a program. It says our input to the program is going to be a person's name. So that means that we'll actually let the user type in a person's name. Okay, and then we'll create a verse of scripture for that person, and then we'll output that scripture. Okay, so in this code, I can isolate a div, so in this case, I have an ID on this div of output div. And in here, I'm assigning a value to that div, okay? And that is all I'm going to do with divs the rest of the semester, now that I showed you guys a little bit of the styling on divs, okay? But that's all we're really going to worry about in this class is, once you do things with JavaScript, you can output something onto the page using a div, okay? And we'll go more into that today. Okay, so getting started with JavaScript. You have your HTML file. It should look something like this. Notice in here that I have a script tag. This right here. It's inside of the head of my document, and I have this script tag. Now, what this says is inside of the script tag, I'm going to use JavaScript. Okay, so this is really confusing to a lot of people because we'll touch on like 3 different languages in this class. We have HTML. This is an HTML document. Inside, I can have a script tag and have JavaScript being rendered. But like I showed you guys right here, I can also have a style tag, which inside of here isn't going to be HTML or JavaScript. It's going to be C++, or not C++, CSS, okay, Cascade Style Sheets. And so HTML can kind of house these different languages to be able to execute different functions. Okay.
Brother Birch,
Yeah.
it's flipped on, like we can just see you, but we can't see the screen, so we can't see what you're doing.
I'm really glad you said that. I wish someone had said that earlier. Okay, there's my screen.
I said it in the chat, but
oh,
I don't
sorry
think
guys.
I wanted to interrupt you.
Sorry guys.
You're good.
All right. So rewind like 2 minutes. Okay, here's my HTML document. Inside of the head tag, I can have a script tag, and inside of here, JavaScript will be rendered. Okay, if I tried to put in HTML, it wouldn't work. All right, it would throw a bunch of errors. And then, like I showed you guys in here, I can also have a style tag where I could say something like, I can have styles to apply to my HTML document. Okay, so one thing that I mentioned last week is that whatever is inside of the body of your HTML document, that is what will actually display on the page. Okay, and then everything inside of the head, it's kind of like the settings for the page. Okay, but in here, I could have styles to be applied to certain things inside of inside of the body of the document, and I can also have JavaScript, which will do different things. And so there's a JavaScript function called alert, and so I could alert, hi there. And if I call that function inside of here and refresh the page, you can see it just popped up this little window that said hi there, okay, before the page even loads. Okay, and so if you think about it, HTML is what will display on the page. Okay, CSS is any of the styles that you want to do. If I wanted to change the look of that button or move something to a different place on the page, I'd use CSS. And then JavaScript is anything that's functional. Okay, so let's say I wanted this button to actually do something and not just like right now I can click on it and it doesn't do anything. If I wanted to pop up that alert window when I push the button, I could do that, but only with JavaScript. If I wanted to do any math, I would need JavaScript. And so JavaScript is it is the programming language of the web. Okay, it's just what is used, and it will allow you to do all sorts of stuff with web pages. Okay, any questions on what JavaScript is before we dive into this a little bit more?
Don't think so.
Okay.
So, Brother Bert,
Yeah, go ahead, Shonda.
does it make it so it's like interactive? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yep, very well said. Okay. All right, so to run a program, JavaScript code can be executed from a number of different events. When the page loads, when the user clicks on something, when the mouse moves, when a certain time requirement is met. Looking at this example from just now with our little pop-up that came up that said hi there, which one of these 4 events triggered that pop-up?
Give me a second. When you click the button.
Okay,
Right.
anyone else have anything else to say?
I thought it was when the page loaded.
Yeah, it was when the page loaded. So watch this, if I refresh, it says hi there, the button's not even on the page yet. The page is like in the middle of loading, and it ran that, okay? But if I wanted this function to be triggered when the page loaded, okay, I would have a button, okay? I could say on click. Now, as soon as I type in this HTML attribute on click, what it's gonna do is it's gonna scour the script tag for a function, okay? I'll just call it test. Okay, and then in here, I can say function test, and then it will run whatever is inside of the function test. Okay, so in here I have my function header, which contains the keyword function, the name of the function for when I want to call it, some parentheses that we'll talk more about later, and then curly braces to show when the function starts and ends. And then whatever's inside of there is what will get run whenever I call that function. And so when I have an onClick attribute with the name of that function, that is what we call calling a function. Okay, it's that button that will call the function. And so if I save this and refresh, I just refreshed, notice the pop-up didn't come, okay, on page load like it did last time. But if I push this button, you can see it popped up. Okay, because that button has that onClick attribute, and it will go find that function and run it. Okay. Any questions on this?
So it's like a pager, like it'll like page it to pop up.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, this is like, yeah, let's page that, or let's call that function. And so it'll go into the script tag, find that function, and then execute whatever's in it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, remember I said that if I had HTML in here, so if I said button, this is another test,
Right.
that won't go well. Okay. Let's see what happens if I run this. Okay. So this is perfectly valid HTML code. If I copy this and put it down here, you can see my colors are a little bit more of what I'd expect. Okay. But if I just leave it up here inside of my JavaScript, watch what happens. So I save my file, hit refresh. All right. And I'm hitting this button, nothing's happening. So my function isn't working. But if I hit F12, that will open up my developer tools. And you can see there's this beautiful red X right there. Okay. If I click on that, it'll open up my console, and it will show me, hey, we have a couple of errors in here that are showing up in the JavaScript. Okay. It says unexpected token and has a lesser than sign. That's how I started my button. And then because of that, it said test isn't defined, my function test. And that's because inside of test, there was an error. So it's like, yeah, we're not going to run that function. Okay. It's not defined because it didn't, because there are errors in it. Okay. So this totally broke my code, putting this button into JavaScript. Okay. But if I cut it out of there and just paste it right here, and if I run it again, you can see there's another button that showed up in the page. Okay, this is another test that won't go well. And this is just an error. We don't have to worry about that error. But then if I push this button, it actually works. It said hi there. Okay, so our code's working now. All right, and that's because I have my HTML code in the body of the HTML document. Okay. So hopefully that helps you just see the fact that HTML code cannot run inside of the script tag. Okay, it'll give you all sorts of errors. So, all right. So we just looked at running a function when the page loads, when the user clicks on something, and you can make it so that when the mouse moves, you can run a function. Okay, if you ever hover over something in a browser and there's a little like pop-up thing, like a tiny one that says, oh yeah, this is like the label for that icon or whatever, that is a JavaScript triggered event. Okay, when the mouse hovered over something, you know, you can trigger that. And also when a certain time requirement is met. You know, I could set a timer and be like, yeah, in 5 seconds, I want to show this pop up to the user, be like, hey, have you subscribed? Like that stuff pops up all the time. You know, in websites like, oh, we noticed you're not a member, you know, like here, you should sign up so we can send you a bunch of stuff. Okay. All those things are triggered by JavaScript. Any questions on any of these? Okay. We will not really touch on these two in this course. Okay. If you want to play with them, you're more than welcome to. But for your assignments, usually you'll just have a function that's called when the user clicks on the button. So. All right, let's look at comments. All right, what do you guys think comments are for? Like if I was looking at a piece of code, why might I want to put comments in here? What do you guys think?
Probably to let the user know like what's happening.
Yeah, for sure. So I can put a comment in HTML with these characters. Okay, it's a little convoluted, but that's just how HTML works. Okay, so I have this thing to open my comment and this to close it. All are required. Then I could say the button below this will call my JavaScript function. All right. Now that might be really clear to somebody who's been doing this for years. But if you're like brand new and you have no idea what's going on, you can put a comment in there so you don't forget. Okay. And then anytime I want another comment, I can have another comment. In JavaScript, watch this. If I try to do that same comment, that same syntax, see how these colors are a little bit funky? Okay, that's a bad sign. All right. And if I typed in a comment saying this is a comment, okay, notice how it doesn't look the same as this comment. Okay, that is because a comment in JavaScript is written like this, just 2 forward slashes, okay, and then I have a comment. And so in here I could be like, yeah, this is a function to have a pop-up on the page or whatever, and I could explain what that function is going to do. Okay, now a couple things about comments. They will never get rendered by the computer. Okay, so notice if I save this, by the way, if you ever see this, hey, thanks for trying out Sublime. Do you want to purchase a license? Don't worry about it. Okay, just hit cancel. If I hit refresh on here, okay, notice that my comment isn't here on the page. I don't see anything about this button that should be here. And I don't see the JavaScript comment either that I put in. All right, and that's because anytime you have a comment, it is just for you and anybody else looking at your code. Okay. Couple other things on comments. You can have a multi-line comment. All right, the syntax for a multi-line comment is a little bit different. It starts off with a / asterisk, and then wherever you have an asterisk / it will end that comment. Okay, and then there's a single line comment with the 2 / like I showed you. All right. Any questions on comments? Okay. They're great for putting jokes into your code for future developers and teachers to see. All right, more JavaScript stuff. Statements will always end with either a semicolon or curly braces. Okay, so if I look at this right here, this is a statement to declare my function, and then it has a curly brace and a closing curly brace for that function. But this single statement here just has a semicolon. All right. Anytime I do anything, let's say I said var x to declare the variable x equals 2 + 2, I have to end that with a semicolon. All right. Anytime I have any statement, I always have to end it with a semicolon. Okay. It is a case-sensitive language. All right. If you didn't know this, if I wanted to, I could type the body like that. If I really wanted to, I could. Okay, and HTML would run that just fine. I could capitalize this H1 tag and leave that one lowercase, and it would work just fine. You cannot do that in JavaScript. Okay, if I put this test like test, and I try to run it, watch what happens. Okay, I'm calling lowercase test, and I have function uppercase test. Okay, if I try running that, hit this button, it says uncaught reference error, test is not defined. Okay, and I can click on it and see that, you know, this test isn't defined, and it's because, you know, when the code ran through there, it found function capital test, but it doesn't recognize those as the same thing. Okay, so JavaScript is a case-sensitive language, even though HTML is not. All right, to declare variables, you use the var keyword and then whatever you want the variable to be called with the semicolon. Okay. String concatenation. That's a really big word to just say I'm kind of throwing strings together. I'm throwing text together. So if I said var message equals hello, that is a single string, but I could also add other things to that string by using this little plus sign. All right, and so in this case, I declared a variable name. Let's say it has like Shonda in there for her name. I could say, hello, Shonda, how are you today? And then I could make this program a little bit more interactive. So if I did that, so I have this alert right here that says hi there. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to make a new variable called name, and I'll go ahead. Shonda, is it okay if I use your name? Okay. All right. So I have var name equals Shonda. All right. Notice that if I want just text to be displayed in this name, I have to put it in quotes. All right, it doesn't matter if I put single quotes or double quotes. All right, both will work. What matters is that I'm consistent. Okay, so if I open it with a single quote, I have to close it with a single quote. If I open it with a double, I have to close it with a double. Okay, so var name equals Shonda. All right, so inside my alert, I could say hi there, plus name, plus, and then I'll have my exclamation mark there. Okay. It's really picky. I'm putting a space right here because Shonda doesn't have a space. All right. What I'm doing right here is basically saying it would be the exact same thing as if I just typed that. Okay. But instead, if I allowed the user to enter in an input or something like that, then I could output a dynamic message to say, you know, to use whatever they input. Okay. So I'm going to save that and run it again. I'm going to hit this button. Oh, test is not defined. We forgot to fix our error. Oops. Okay, so test is lowercase. It'll be defined now. All right. Now notice if I didn't have these developer tools open and I hit that button, I would have hit that button like 1,000 times being like, why isn't this working? Okay. So if you forgot how I did it, F12 will open up these developer tools, or you can right click in the page and hit inspect. Looks like you can also hit Control Shift L or I. I can't tell which one of those it is. Okay. But I always just hit F12. Okay. But I can hit that button now. And oh, it still says test is not defined. I'm going to refresh the page, hit the button, and it says, hi there, Shonda. Okay. So that is a classic example of string concatenation. All right. And notice it just threw all those, it threw those three strings together. My first one was hi there with the space after there. The next one was the variable name, which had Shonda in it. And the next one was an exclamation mark. Okay. Any questions on this code? Okay, sounds good. All right, well, let's keep going then. Text fields. So if I had a function or I had a program that said, please enter your name. So let's say I had that same, my same program, okay? I could use a text field, an input field, to have the user type in something, okay? So let's say I had a program where I wanted to just say hi there, okay? So I have my button here. I'm gonna delete some of this stuff just so we have our single button. And then I'll just say very personal program. All right, so we have our header, and then I'm gonna put a paragraph. Well, I'll just put an input. So an input is how we're gonna let the user type in something. So if I just put input like this and save it and run it, okay, notice this little input that popped up, okay? I could click in there and type in there, and that's my input, okay? Let me go back. This is what was causing our error, our red error that was popping up in the console, because I'm saying, hey, use this style sheet, but I don't have a file called test.css. Okay. I'm going to delete that too, so we can simplify this a bit. All right, so I have my input, and I'm going to say ID. Well, I'm going to say type text. Okay. By saying type, I can actually first of all, allow the user to type in something. If I say text, then whatever they give me, it will come back as a string, okay, which just means it's in quotes like this, okay? Even if they typed in a number into a type text field, it would come back as like that if they typed in 5, okay? It would come back as a string, okay? If I have a number, if I say type number here, then if you open up like that input on your cell phone, then your regular keyboard won't pop up. It'll just be like a keyboard with your numbers, okay? But I'm going to say type text. So input type text. If I refresh the page now, you can see now I can actually type in there and say, oh, my name is Nathan, okay? But it's still not going to do anything, okay? I have no way to reference this input from up here unless I give it an ID. And that is what IDs are used for. IDs are used so that you can isolate different pieces of your program, okay? So I'm going to say ID equals username, all right? And then up in here, instead of saying var name equals Shonda, I'm going to say var name equals document dot get element by ID. Get element by ID is a function that is built into JavaScript. Document is a large collection of data that is also built into JavaScript. So as soon as I load an HTML file, I could reference document and it has like a billion things in it. It has the URL, it has what language we're using, it has the URI, it has different settings for the page, it has everything in there, okay? That document object does, including the function called getElementById. GetElementById takes a single parameter, which means we're going to type something into these parentheses, okay? In this case, I'm saying, hey, I want to find an ID in the page, and so whatever ID I want to find, I'm going to put inside these quotation marks. So I want username, this ID that we put on our input down here, and I'll put it right here, okay? So now I'm saying, all right, inside my document, I'm going to find an element by its ID, okay? Remember last week we talked about all these elements, okay? And so using getElementById, I can isolate a specific element by its ID, okay? And so I use that ID right there. But this in and of itself will give me this entire thing. It'll show me that it's an input. It'll show me what the type is. It'll show me what the value is. It'll show me how big it is, all sorts of stuff. And so after this, I'm going to say dot value because I want the value of whatever the user typed in, okay? So I'm going to save that and we're going to run this again, okay? So I'm going to refresh and I'm just going to put, well, let's use Shonda since we already used her again before. And if I run this function, I'll hit that button and it says, hi there, Shonda. Okay, notice in my code, var name isn't equal to Shonda. Var name is equal to the value of my username ID in the body of the document. Okay, and so if I go back, I can use my developer tools to help me kind of see what's going on. Okay, so I'm in my sources tab here. And there I have videos in our video spreadsheet of how to use the elements tab, the console tab, and the sources tab. Okay, but I can put a breakpoint right here to basically like pause the code, okay? And we can look and see what all is going on. So I'm gonna change this now to Amanda, and I'm gonna hit this button. Notice it called my test function, okay? It just paused the code inside of my function test. Let me blow this up a little bit so you guys can see it better. All right, name, if I hover over it, it says it's undefined because we have not yet assigned a value to name. If I hover over document, look at all this stuff in here. Okay, it has the URL. You can see it's on my C drive. Okay, active element. Look how big this is. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in here.
Holy.
And like I said, this is just built into JavaScript. Okay, anytime you have an HTML file, you'll have this document object that has a billion things you're never going to use. Okay, I mean, you'll use some of these things, but most of them you will not. Okay, I can hover over getElementById, and you can see that it recognizes this as a function. Okay, that's what that little squiggly F is for. It recognizes it as a function. Okay, and if I hover over document, I can actually scroll through here and find, well, maybe it's somewhere else, but getElementById is a part of the document, and that's why we can use it like this. Okay, I can also highlight over. I can highlight from document to the end of that parenthesis and see what this input is. So you can see it found input with an ID of username. Okay, you can see it has all this stuff. Like I said, it also has a base URI. It has an autofocus, which is set to false. Client height, client left top. It's showing like where its location is on the page. Some of its other attributes. What its ID is. You can see there's the ID that we have on that input. So you can see when I use getElementById, it will get all this stuff. All right, and most of this stuff I'm not going to use too. There's a lot of stuff in here. Okay, you can see there's one here that says on mouse enter. So I could make it so that, you know, when the mouse hovers over this document, I could have it do something. Okay, or when the mouse leaves, I could have it do something. Okay, all sorts of stuff. But in here, if I scroll to the bottom, you'll see this value of Amanda. Okay, whatever I typed into that input, that is what the value will be set to. Okay, so when I want to get data from the user, I have an input. That input has a unique ID. And then in JavaScript, I say, okay, document dot get element by ID, the unique ID dot value. And then I can assign that to a variable. Okay. And so if I highlight over document get element by ID, username value, I can see exactly what that is going to be. And it is Amanda. Okay, because that's what the user typed in. All right. If I go to the next step in my code, if I hit F10, you can see name is now defined. All right, it assigned that value to my variable name. All right, and then we'll call that alert function, and we'll alert hi there, name, exclamation mark, and that's what it looks like. Okay. So there's a lot going on here. All right, I record these videos. Oh, I'm not recording. Oh, I am recording. Okay, good. I was really scared for a second. All right. I record these videos so that you guys can go back and see everything going step by step. But the biggest thing that I can tell you guys for this is just practice. Okay. If you never open up your developer tools, you'll never learn how to use them. If you open them up every single time you code, you'll start to get really familiar with how they work and where things are. And same thing with using document.getElementById. You know, the first few times I would type this out, okay? And if it doesn't work, I would compare it with one that does work and be like, why isn't this working? You know, you can have this video paused while you're trying to write out your own program and be like, okay, document.getElementById. And there's also examples of that exact same thing in the book. Okay, you can see document.getElementById, name input box, which is the ID of this input, dot value. Okay, we just did that exact same thing. All right, but this took it one step further. Okay, so let's add on to our code a little bit. Let's say I don't like pop-ups because I don't. Okay, and I didn't want to use an alert. So what I can do is say var message equals hi there plus name plus exclamation mark. Okay, so that'll give me my exact same message that I was just outputting to the user in that alert box. But now I'm going to use this div. Okay, I'm going to delete everything inside of it. Okay, so you can see all I have is just a beautiful empty div. I know that because there's nothing in between its opening tag and its closing tag. Okay. So now that I have this div, this empty div, and it has an ID of unique paragraph, I can use that ID, same way that I used the other ID, to isolate this div and put something in it. All right, so I'm going to say document.getElementById, and this time I'm going to say unique paragraph. All right, this guy right here. I want to make sure that these match. Okay, my text editor, as soon as I double click something, it'll show me like a little square or rectangle around any other instance of that same string. Okay, so that's kind of nice. I can see that they're the same. All right, so I just found the document, isolated this ID, but instead of value, okay, the user didn't type anything into this div. So instead of value, I'm going to use a different attribute of this function. I'm going to say dot inner HTML. Okay, equals message. All right, so look at everything that's going on. If I had to comment this out, if I wanted to put comments in here, I could say, okay, this is our input, this is our processing, and this is our output. All right, we have our input, we're getting the value from the user. We have our processing, we're doing something with that input, and then we have our output, where we're going to give something back to the user. All right, and notice this line of code is really similar to this one. Okay, both are using document.getElementById. The only difference is when I want to get a value from the user, I have to say dot value. When I want to put something back into the HTML for the user, I say inner HTML. Okay, so I'm going to save this and hit refresh. Notice my beautiful pink text is gone. Okay, and that's because I emptied out that div. All right, but if I click on elements, I can see here I have h1, an input, a button, and then a div. And it's pointing at it in the page. You can see that little tooltip thing right there. It's pointing at it, but there's nothing there. Okay, and then it just has my paragraphs. All right, now let's put another name in here. Let's say Viviana, and I'll hit this button. Oh, we had a breakpoint. I'm taking out this breakpoint and letting my code resume. Okay, look what just happened. This was not there before. This just magically popped up on the page, and that is where the div was. Okay, if I go back to the elements and I see that div, now I can open it and see, oh wow, like this message just like magically appeared there. And it is like magic. It's pretty intense. Okay, but I took that input, I put it into a message, I just made a variable for it that I wanted to output to the user. Can you guys hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Sorry, my computer is like wigging out today. It keeps on like freezing on me.
Technology.
Yeah, seriously. And then we could output that back to the user. Okay. Any questions on this process?
I think as we just practice it, it'll get better.
Yep.
Like you said.
Yep. What I would recommend when you come across those examples in your book, copy the example,
Mhm.
and in Sublime here, just hit Control-N, paste your example, save it, and then open it in the browser and just run it. And then you can actually see that example running.
Oh,
That
okay.
will help.
Yeah.
You could even make a little folder for like book examples. All right. If anybody wants to know how I did this over here, I think I showed Shonda this the other day, but if you hit File and hit Open Folder, I highly recommend that you have a folder for the class and then a folder for the programs in this class. Okay. And then in here you could have chapter 1 if you wanted, chapter 2, or you could just have all your stuff inside. But if you have a folder for these programs, then you can just select that folder and hit Select Folder, and then it'll show up like this. Okay. And then I can go through here and I can click on all these files, and it's really nice. So,
cool.
little tip for you guys. Google Chrome is not working for me.
Oh, no.
All right. So are you guys feeling okay with the concept here of the inputs and the outputs and all of that?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll take silence as a maybe. All right, moving along, we have our reserved words, okay? I don't expect you to memorize this list, all right? But I want you to be aware that there are words that are reserved in JavaScript. For example, when I was making that variable, I had to use the keyword var, which shows up right here, okay? I said var name equals, and then I got that input, okay? If I tried to name it like var while, it wouldn't work because while is used in JavaScript for doing loops anytime you want to repeat a chunk of code. So I couldn't do that, all right? And I can't use these reserved keywords or reserved words for naming variables or for using in JavaScript, okay? And like I said, I don't expect you to memorize them, but one thing that might be helpful is as long as you have it saved as an HTML file, notice how some of these things are colored differently.
Yeah.
It is because they are keywords in the language, okay? If I type in function down here, it's just white, it doesn't care. If I type in function up inside the script tag, it's like, ooh, JavaScript keyword, nice, okay? So inside of your text editor, it will have this syntax here. So if I tried to say, oh, var while, notice while just became pink, okay? That's a really good sign that while is a keyword in JavaScript that you can't use, okay? And if I tried to run this, it would show me an error if I had my developer tools open, and I would see that. But so while you're typing stuff, if your color is super funky or something like this is going on, you can tell there's something amiss. So be aware of that. And again, this will only happen if you have your file saved as an HTML document. Okay.
Right.
Might seem like a simple thing to do, but lots of people forget to save them as HTML documents. All right. Debugging, we went over this a little bit, but make sure you have your file saved as an HTML file, okay? If anybody doesn't know how to do that, let's say I make a new file here, I could just hit save and then name.html, and that will save it as an HTML file. Okay. Validate it. Okay. There's this incredible tool called the HTML validator. I don't know if that's an official name for it, but you can go to this link. Chrome just crashed again.
Oh no.
You can go to this link and you can validate your code. Okay. There are a couple of tabs in there. You can type in a URL if your code is live somewhere in the internet. You can upload a file. Okay, if I had that name.html file saved, I could just upload it, or I could just go into my file, hit Control A, Control C, copy it, and then paste it into that direct input tab, and then hit validate, and it'll show you if you have any HTML errors. Okay. Check the JavaScript console. This is huge, you guys. Remember when I was hitting that button in our document and it wasn't working?
Yeah.
And nothing was showing up on the page?
Mm-hmm.
But in the developer tools, it showed that I had clicked that button and it ran that error 7 different times.
Yeah.
Okay, and that like bright red. Use those developer tools. Okay. In the announcement this week, I included a link to our video spreadsheet. Okay. In the far right column of that video spreadsheet are other helpful videos. Okay, and there are videos on how to use the developer tools. There's one on the Elements tab, on the Console tab, and the Sources tab, and that will help you learn how to use the console. If you want to learn how to use the debugger right now, you can, and that video will help you learn. But yeah, I would encourage you to always have your developer tools open. Always validate your code once you're finishing up a project. Yeah. So any questions about any of these things?
Don't.
Okay. In that case, I'm just going to show you guys one more example. I have a new file. Okay. You know what? Actually, let me just close this real quick. All right. If I wanted to start a new HTML file, I would open up my text editor. If anybody doesn't have it, I recommend that you download Sublime, but you don't have to use Sublime. There are other text editors out there. You can even use Notepad, which would be a horrible choice because it doesn't do syntax highlighting or other helpful things, but you can if you want. That is a text editor that is built into Windows, okay? But anyways, you can use any text editor you want. I use Sublime. In here, let's say I wanted to start a new HTML file, all right? What I would do, I'm gonna do something that I never do right now because Chrome is apparently having some serious issues this morning.
No, no.
So I just need to restart my computer. All right, though I don't have a browser, it looks like. Oh, good. Internet Explorer. Haven't used this thing since I was like 10. All right, so in here, I can just type in W3 Schools HTML. And let's see what comes up here. All right, W3 Schools HTML tutorial. And you can grab a template from your book as well. But what I'm doing, I'm just going to copy this right here. Okay. This is a really good starter spot for any HTML document. Okay, and so I'm going to grab that and I'm just going to paste it in here. Okay, once I have it in here, I'm going to tab things over just a little bit. Okay, anything that's inside of an opening and closing tag of something, I'm going to hit tab on that, so it's easy to see where my different, basically like where my different levels of code are. Okay, once I have this, I'm going to hit save. I just hit Control S. I'll just save this to my desktop, and I'll call it Awesome Experiment. Okay, and notice that it recognizes this as an HTML file. It's probably because what I pasted in there had doctype HTML in it. But if this isn't here, open this up and make sure that it recognizes it as HTML. Or, like I said earlier, just type in .html there. Either one will work. Okay. Now that it's saved as an HTML document, I can run it in my browser. I can right-click inside of the document and either click on Open in Browser or Copy File Path. Right now, my default browser is wigging out. So I copy the file path and I'm going to go up to the URL bar and paste and hit enter. All right, you can see here's my HTML document. I can see page title is here for the tab, or in the tab where I have my title. All right, and you can see I have this is a heading, this is a paragraph, and I have this heading and this paragraph. Okay, and then from here I could keep on going. I could type in script, and try an alert, see what that would do, and all sorts of stuff. So, but I just wanted to show you that process again, start to finish, using your text editor, saving it as an HTML file, opening it in your browser, and actually running it. Okay, and then again, I recommend that anytime you're running it in your browser, right-click and hit inspect, so that you can have those developer tools open. Okay.
Cool.
One thing that I love about Chrome is the amazing developer tools that it has. Okay. So anyways. All right. I'm all frozen again, but are there any other questions that you guys have?
Not right now.
Okay. Well, hang in there. Use the peer review discussion board out the wazoo. That'll be really helpful for you. And if you need any help with anything, just shoot me or Emily, our TA, a message, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Woot woot. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. I hope you guys have a great day. I'm going to go restart my computer.
Good luck.
Thanks. Bye, guys. Have a good week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.